Jimmy McAllister found the net. Goal for Wednesday.
Terrific goal by Taylor.
Chris Waddle, is he going to have a crack?
Oh, he does, and he scores. Still Glenn Wheeler. Aidan Flynn wins the Is there time for a winner?
Hello and welcome all to the Wednesday Till I Die podcast. I am Matt Johnson and I am joined once again by everybody's favourite football finance expert, Kieran Maguire. Kieran, just before we get...
Don't let Swiss Ramble hear you say that.
Oh, sorry. Apologies. They haven't been on, to be fair, recently, so, it is what it is. You're my favourite then, let's put it that way. Before we kind of get into, because I've seen Matt Richards in the chat has already hosted this evening. Guessing Matt's quickly scrambling around, adding another embargo to the script for this evening. First off, Kieran, let's get into the good stuff. How are you?
I'm grand. I was up in your neck of the woods on Tuesday night because Brighton were playing at Barnsley.
Yep.
So I had a fantastic evening, and as we know as football fans, it's a great day out. Normally spoiled by 90 minutes of football, but the football didn't spoil it, and we had a fantastic curry afterwards in Barnsley. So yeah, I'm good.
Interesting. Fantastic curry in Barnsley. Now, as a man from Birmingham, I must say, Kieran, I'm going to hold some objection here. First off, where was it? And secondly, what was the order?
Well, it was a bit weird because we had booked a table for the end of the match, so for about 10 p.m. And so you're on Google Maps. Yeah. And we're walking past these, everything was closed and boarded up and so on, as it is at that time of night. And then we saw this flight of stairs, and I thought, well, what is this type of place? You don't normally go up a flight of stairs to get to a curry house. But we were the only people there. To be fair, some more fans followed us. I just had a chicken balti, and it was good, and the naan bread was excellent, and the seat kebabs were sizzling, which is how I like them. Yeah. So very impressed.
Oh, brilliant. No, I know exactly what I'm doing for food tomorrow evening. Right, before we dive into this, because I did have a running order, obviously, for this evening, but obviously Sheffield Wednesday had other ideas. So for those who don't know or haven't been burdened with the bad news as of yet, Sheffield Wednesday were previously under an embargo heading into the recording of this podcast, which was Regulation 1621.8, which was the future financial information, one that we were all made very well aware of, obviously, in the run-up to this, Dejpon Chansiri being unable to provide effectively proof of funds about the financial future for the club and being able to provide a plan moving forward. However, as of recording, which is the 25th of September, we welcome in some more fresh hell into P&S Rule 2.10.3, which is secure funding, and Regulation 17.3, HMRC reporting. Kieran, can I please ask you, as quickly as possible, as somebody who is incredibly knowledgeable on this, what on earth does that actually mean?
Well, all football clubs have to pay their VAT on time. And they also have to pay their PAYE, i.e. the money which has been deducted from staff salaries, to HMRC. I think it's normally within 14 days of the end of the month. And that's the same for all employers. Because the EFL and the Premier League are concerned about the way that many clubs are run, they now have access to whether or not clubs have paid on time. I think clubs are supposed to self-report if they've missed a payment to the tax authorities. And if that is the case, the response of the EFL is, if you cannot pay your tax on time, we are not going to allow you to sign football players on contracts, because you're getting an advantage, in the sense that if you're able to recruit, you should be able to pay your bills, especially if you remember, you think about it, VAT is tax which is being collected from people when they're buying pies and merchandise, and PAYE is tax which is being collected on behalf of the government by Sheffield Wednesday Football Club Limited to pay the tax for, the employment taxes are mainly to do with the employees themselves. So it looks as if that has not taken place in terms of that money going across. So therefore, the EFL say, right, box ticked, and further embargo. It makes little difference given that we're outstanding embargoes and we are in September. But I think it's indicative of a much broader malaise at the club, in the sense that there are multiple financial issues across a variety of parties to whom Chancery owes money.
Okay, and I'm gonna start off by Kieran, because you were penned in a fantastic article, obviously, that was recently released surrounding the club, and you've mentioned that Dejphon Chancery has ultimately failed the football club. What do you think, I suppose, in all of this, because we've covered, I suppose, in the first two pods of this series I've been lucky enough to sit down with you and talk about Sheffield Wednesday's finances about. We've spoken about kind of like administration, which was a long way off, which don't worry, we'll get to that, because we are now at that potentially, and the landscape has changed a little bit. But I suppose just to set the scene, really, what do you think have been Dejphon Chancery's biggest financial missteps in this latest series of kind of errors? And when I say latest series of errors, I mean from around about March type of time of this year, when we first realised, oh no, there's a problem with paying players here.
Well, first of all, a lack of planning. He doesn't appear to have a strategy. Secondly, a failure to recruit professional people around him with whom he can take advice in terms of setting up something so that the bills can be paid. He's not accessible. I don't know whether you've seen it, but I was listening to a podcast earlier today featuring Barry Bannon, who comes across superbly well, and he was talking to some other Scottish footballers and people from the Scottish football landscape, and he genuinely cares about the club, and he genuinely cares about his fellow employees. And he says, we as footballers, we're in a slightly different place to the people who are working in the back office and so on. And we have got a little bit more flexibility in terms of what we can do. But at the same time, I'm potentially in the last year of my career. Other players will have left and so on. So he made it clear that there was nobody to talk to. There was no communication. And if you're not going to pay staff, at least have the common decency to give them some notice. When you open up your bank account on payday and there's nothing there, and then you get an email from the club, oh yeah, wages are late, then there is a problem. So there's a lack of strategy. Dejphon Chancery said he was trying to find other people to invest in the club. Okay, he has failed. He has failed Sheffield Wednesday. He has failed the staff, and he has failed the fans, because that money has not arrived. And if you say you're going to do something, if you say that this is your process, then you've got to deliver. And he has failed to deliver on a myriad of things. In terms of his relationship with the EFL, again, he has failed to lodge documentation. He's failed to lodge proof of funds, and it all comes back to him. And we have a rather sort of glib saying in the world of football finance: football clubs don't go bust, owners do. And Dejphon Chancery has not looked after his own finances in a professional enough manner to allow him to continue to financially support the club. And it has to be remembered, I've been very critical there, that he has put a lot of money in historically, but you can't live a Michelin star lifestyle and then expect people to continue to exist when you turn off the taps. And I think it's been a lot of misrepresentation from him. It's been unfair. It's created expectations. It's people have signed contracts with Sheffield Wednesday in good faith as well, and failure to pay those wages on time is a breach of that trust.
Okay, you obviously have mentioned surrounding Chansiri there and that searching for investment, I think a lot of Sheffield Wednesday fans got very excited or even allowed themselves a moment of celebration when a broker was appointed to try and find a buyer from the club. From your perspective, in terms of looking at purely the numbers and the side of things that obviously you specialise in, do you think that there is any evidence that Chansiri is actively trying to attract outside investment or quietly negotiate a sale? Or does it actually look more like he's trying to hold on despite mounting liabilities? Now, I am going to just preface this here, Kieran, and say I am not talking about unrefined gold here. I am talking about, does there actually look like, with all of this that is going on, is there anything that gives any indication that there actually may have been aside from the appointing of a broker, that might give fans a glimmer of hope that actually he is attempting to attract outside investment or actually look to sell the football club?
He does want to sell the football club on his terms. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that his terms are unrealistic. Mm-hmm. Sheffield Wednesday was not worth £150 million. 12 months ago, it was not worth £100 million. 6 months ago, and the value of the club is declining by the month as players leave, as people become aware that if you do buy Sheffield Wednesday Football Club, the first thing you've got to do is spend an awful lot of money on restoration and maintenance as far as Hillsborough is concerned. It all starts to become very expensive, and he wants to walk away with something. But if you do the sums, we would normally say that a club in the Championship is worth somewhere between 1.5 and 2 times, or perhaps if you're really organised, 2.5 times revenue. Well, Sheffield Wednesday is going down. It was at 2 6 months ago. It's now at 1.5. And if I was saying, well, what a revenue is going to be like in 12 months' time, unless there is a change of ownership and a complete sea change at the club. And I know fans don't want to hear this, and I know you had a fantastic result at Pompey at the weekend. Look at what the bookies are doing in terms of how they're pricing in relegation for the club. So then you say, okay, do we value Sheffield Wednesday as a League One club, or as a sort of a hybrid League One or Championship club? That has another negative impact as far as the price is concerned. And if relegation does take place, your TV money drops from around about £10 million this season to around about 2 next. That's a big hit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we obviously had previously spoken, we had mooted all of the possibilities for it, and I think we both came to the conclusion, based obviously on your expertise, not mine, surrounding that actually the best thing moving forward would be that there was a window of opportunity for Deshwan Chansiri to actually exact some sort of money back for the club and recoup some of the money. And actually, we'd had a discussion at that point talking about the dreaded A word, which was obviously administration at the time. We've gone a couple of months past that now, and actually that over the course of some of the stuff that we're going to come on to talk about over the next half an hour or so, I suppose just from the outset, based and given off the information that we know, how close is Sheffield Wednesday to actual insolvency or administration? Is it weeks, months, longer term? And I know obviously we've spoken about the intricacies of it, but again, just from a purely numbers perspective, what's your belief on that situation?
Well, Sheffield Wednesday gets effectively a monthly allowance from the EFL in terms of the TV money that is due. So that will be measured in hundreds of thousands. That will go some way to covering the wages. Now, I saw a journalist today hinting that there had been non-payment of supply. I don't know whether this is true or not.
Yeah,
but I think this seems to be a journalist who's got a fair number of followers. These people.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kieran. Sorry to interrupt you. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was Andy Giddings, who obviously knows the club and knows the local area very well, and would be well connected. Let's say within the he would be plugged into clubs around the South Yorkshire area for sure.
Exactly, and journalists live or die by their reputation. So you don't put out gossip. You don't. You second source. You third source these stories. Because you want to be accurate and you don't want to be. There's plenty of ITK people on social media that burn very, very quickly when they come out with nonsense. So Sheffield Wednesday had some player trading over the course of the summer, which generated some money. That buys time.
Yeah.
Some of the big earners left. Josh left, for example, at the end of his contract, and he wasn't paid, so he was able to walk away. So some of your better paid players, and I think some of the players that perhaps have decided to stay will have stayed on less
reduced terms. Barry Bannon being an example. Yeah,
exactly. So the wage bill is down. How much it's down, I'm not in a position to say, but I still think that outgoings are more than the money that's coming in.
Yeah.
So it's really a case of how are they going to survive on the basis of the player sales and also the instalments from players that have been sold perhaps in previous summer windows. How much is that money going to last? And is Chansiri in a position to put in 50 grand a month, 100 grand a month, whatever it's going to be? Whereas historically, it was probably costing him between 1 and 2 million a month. Clearly, he's not in that financial position these days to offer that same level of support, which that creates a benchmark. That's the problem. If you're used to spending 20 million pounds a year as running a football club, and 8 million of that's coming from the owner, and the owner doesn't have that 8 million anymore, that's where the problem lies. So I think that is why we are in this mess that we are in at present. So where does that leave us in terms of administration? Well, from what Andy Giddens was saying, people haven't been paid. If people don't get paid, what are their options? One of their options is to petition for winding up order, to send the bailiffs around and so on. So how do you protect a business under those circumstances? That's when the club phones up the administrators and says, can you offer us effectively a shield?
Yeah.
Because we are in financial distress. We can't pay the bills as they fall due. And the first thing the administrators will say is, who's going to pay us?
Yeah. So
in the case of Derby County, it looks like Mel Morris actually underwrote the costs of running the administration, which was, 2.5, perhaps £3 million. So it's not a cheap option. So does Chansiri have the money to do that, or is Chansiri willing to effectively knock that off the ultimate sale proceeds? And then you go, well, by the time you pay the administrators, we've got New Avenue projects at 7.4 million. We don't know how much money is owed to HMRC. And if you're going to come out of the administration, you've got to pay your unsecured creditors at least 25% of what's owed to them. We don't know how much that is, unless you want another points deduction. It all starts to become quite expensive. And you go, well, you got all of that, you sell the club, it doesn't leave very much for Dejon. And we don't know his personal circumstances. We don't know whether has he borrowed, does he owe money to third parties that we're not aware of because he's taken on personal loans. So it's messy, and administration should never be seen as an easy option. People will lose their jobs, and good, honest suppliers of products and services in South Yorkshire, many of whom who will be Wednesday fans, and therefore they would have probably given the club extended credit, they're going to lose 75% of what's owed to them. Yeah. It's not good.
No. Okay. Can I also just touch on the embargo situation that the club find themselves on? I know we spoke about it at the start here, but how unusual is it for a championship or even a League One club to be under embargo for future financial information and secure funding? Is this a clear sign of imminent financial failure, or more of a warning flag for potentially the upcoming independent football regulator?
Well, in theory, the IFR opens their in-tray on the 1st of November.
Yeah.
And clearly, I would imagine the number of Sheffield Wednesday related queries in that in-tray is going to be very, very high. I don't actually think that the two things are linked. Okay. I know that many Wednesday fans are angry towards the EFL. I've got contacts at the EFL. In my view, having had conversations with people there and people elsewhere as well, they are constrained by their own rule book. There's only so much they can do. So what their next step could be is to, having been down this route, which is not dissimilar to what we saw with Reading Football Club a few months ago, and that's now all sorted. And Reading fans can you never want me to come on this show again. And
I would like to have you on this show to discuss good things, Kieran. That would be great.
But I'm the Grim Reaper of football finance. See, I know my role. I'm under no illusion. I'd love to meet you for a curry and a pint and
that'd be
and a
great.
chat. Absolutely fantastic, and a bunch of other Wednesday fans, and we can just talk. We can talk nonsense about football rather than where we are at present, which is Sheffield Wednesday on a life support machine.
Yeah,
from a financial perspective. So the regulator will have enhanced powers that the EFL doesn't have. The EFL, all that it can do is it can put pressure on Chancery by putting in this additional embargo. What's it doing? It's highlighting the problem it still exists. It's providing humiliation for the owner. It doesn't reflect well on him at all. Putting extra pressure on, and that's the route that we went down with Di Yonga at Reading. I think is it Mr. Betts, Peter Betts? I can't remember his
Clive Betts.
Clive Betts has been very vocal as a local MP. Again, I had meetings at the House of Commons with the MP from Reading, just to say this is where we are. These are the issues, and so on. So everybody who cares about Wednesday from a variety of reasons and a variety of backgrounds in terms of their influence is trying to nudge Chancery into doing the right thing. The problem is he doesn't answer emails, he doesn't pick up the phone, he's not necessarily in the country. So it makes it quite difficult. How do you get hold of him under those circumstances? But the EFL are doing their utmost. The next step for the EFL, if we're going to replicate what we saw at Reading, is that they will say, we now believe that you should divest, you should sell the shares formally. Again, it's an announcement trying to pressurize Dejan to seeing a bit of sense. And going back to what you were saying a little bit earlier, is there a broker trying to sell the club? Yeah, but if I live in the middle of nowhere and I'm on a teacher's salary, if I appoint an estate agent who says, I think your house is worth 200 grand, and I say, okay, stick it on the market for 500. They might nominally stick it in the window for a couple of days, but nobody's going to look at it and nobody's going to come in. So there is a little bit, I think, of misrepresentation if the asking price is unrealistic.
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate assessment from... It strikes me as the amount of time that this has gone on for, it appears like it's window dressing, but that's just my personal opinion. Okay, you have mentioned New Avenue loans here, and I'm going to ask you surrounding the 7.4 million loan, let's call it, or the debt against Hillsborough Stadium. So, how serious is the situation regarding the 7.4 million loan secured against Hillsborough, and what might happen if that debt isn't settled by the 30th of September deadline, which is 5 days away?
Okay. My understanding, having asked around earlier today, is that is it Nigel Weiss?
It's somebody Weiss, yes.
I
can't remember the name.
Okay, we're calling Mr. Weiss.
Yeah.
He has no desire to be the person that stuck the knife into Sheffield Wednesday. So provided he's paid interest then he said, if you take a look at the accounts of New Avenue projects, you go, they don't have anything themselves. They've not got any. They got about 800 grand of cash in their bank account, and they owe some people a bit of money. So how were they in a position to lend Sheffield Wednesday Football Club £7.4 million? The chances are they've acted as a broker themselves. They borrowed money at, let's say, at 7%, and they've lent it to Dejan at 12% or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
So from their point of view, provided the interest payments are coming in, they've got the security over the stadium. From what I've heard, and I've not spoken to the guy himself, so I am acting through a third party, but third parties who I have a lot of respect for, that he doesn't want to be the person that's firing the gun. Mm-hmm. At the same time, is he concerned? Yeah, anybody would be concerned under those circumstances. So I think that potential trigger, because if he turns around and says, I want my £7.4 million on the 30th of September, then realistically, the only option is administration, unless Dejan's got a magic money tree, or unless is Euro Millions coming this weekend. And that's sort of the position. The other issue is that we're having this chat on the 25th of September. Payday is due. And is that £1.5 million, whatever it's going to be? If that is not paid, where does that leave players? Well, if you are 14 days late, potentially you're in breach of contract as a club. Now, we saw over the course of the summer what the club tried to do, and I thought this was. I understand it from a business point of view, but it is so insidious. It is so repulsive on so many levels. On a human level, is that the club will perhaps try to pay those players who have value in the January transfer window, because they're treating those players as commodities. And where does that leave the groundsman? Where does that leave the guy that repairs the floodlights? Where does that leave the people in the office who are selling tickets and so on? It leaves them at the back of the queue in terms of priority. Having said that, again, I was listening to the other podcast where Barry Bannon was saying, he said, well, end of August, we're all paid on time. But then I'd expect that to be the case, because you had a couple of instalments from the EFL. Yes, you had sold a player or two, and therefore sort of it's a bit like having an egg timer. That money from which had come in from the summer is starting to drain. Where is that point where that money runs out? I don't know the exact sums involved. And if players were sold, were they sold on credit? Did Dejan accept a reduced fee because the other club said, well, we will pay you either £3.5 million over 3 years, or we'll pay you £2.5 million now? And he goes, right, I'll have it. So we don't know that.
Yeah, and I think, again, just to echo what you were saying there, I think Barry Bannon also confirmed on the Open Goal podcast, the podcast that you've referenced a couple of times there, that he has understood that there were players like Jan Valery, who is in the Tunisia national squad, who is a World Cup player next year. He was paid on time. Pierce Charles paid on time, as you've said, just to back that point up there about the paying of assets. I suppose just going back to the stadium here then, in your view, could a forced sale or repossession of Hillsborough be on the cards, or would that require multiple different steps of default and legal actions first?
Well, somebody has to get in contact with a lawyer first. Now, that's expensive. Nobody wants to be seen to be that person. The vast majority of suppliers are good, honest people, many of whom are owls themselves. You love the club. You don't want to do it. And even when I talk to Sheffield United fans, they say, are they having a few giggles? Yes, they are. But I say, hold on. My uncle's Sports Wednesday. Half the guys I work with, in my place of employment, and you can't have a rivalry without rivals. So taking the mickey on the pitch, but no fan of any club wants to see employees of any football club being unpaid. It's not acceptable. So could there be some form of legal action? Yes. Who's that most likely to come from? Probably the likes of HMRC, because HMRC are under pressure from central government to collect as much tax as possible. When I last looked, there's a bit of a hole in the government's finances as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Just to touch on a point before we move on here, I think I have cited it on the last two main shows that we've done on a Sunday, surrounding the total money owed in the next 40 days. I estimate it at being roughly £10 million. That's assuming the loan also, the full 7.4 million of the loan is called in. That is this month's wages, next month's wages, and also the tax bill that comes in that time as well. I think from everything that you have suggested there with Nigel Vance, he has no potential desire to be the person who pulls the trigger and actually starts off this massive process here, which could ultimately end up seeing the club go one of two ways, either be sold or be plunged into administration. Is there scope, because this has been something that has been mooted as a theory, and it's something that I have, I suppose, theorised about myself as well, because we as fans have relatively sound knowledge, and the Supporters Trust have spoke on this, about the fact that the lender is perhaps willing to accept a reduced offer to buy the debt that is owed to in relation to that mortgage. Is that genuinely a viable option at this point in time? I understand why that may not be done perhaps 30 days before a loan is due, because you want to give the owner obviously as much time as possible to do so. But I'm aware that Coventry were in a similar situation with their stadium, which they've just recently purchased and bought back. Is this something that there is precedent for it, obviously, but is this something that would be seen as, I suppose, a risky financial investment from an outside third party who are looking to buy that debt? Or would it be something that is viable and could potentially force through a sale?
It's a difficult one. If I was a lender, why would I take a haircut on a loan? Why not pressurize the club? Because he's got security on the loan, the hierarchy of payments is that secured lenders get paid first. HMRC in theory is a preferred creditor, but we saw with Derby that they were HMRC was shamed into taking 25%, even though they're entitled to more. You've got football creditors as well. Now, I don't think, apart from players, I suspect Wednesday don't owe that much money as far as transfer fees is concerned, for the very fact that we were discussing the embargo and so on. I wouldn't place myself in that position. If I'd lent in good faith, if I've got security over the stadium, I would say, provided Sheffield Wednesday sold for more than 7.4 million, then I get my money back. Now, we've got a further complication, is that money has been lent to Sheffield 3, who own Hillsborough. Yeah. And if an administrator is appointed, they are not in a position to sell Hillsborough. That has to be a decision made by Chancery himself. So that's a further level of complication. And this is one of the things that does make me feel slightly uncomfortable. That means that Chancery is kingmaker, because if Chancery doesn't like the cut of the jib or whatever in relation to somebody that the administrator is getting on with. So if we go back to Derby County, the administrator was in negotiation with Mike Ashley to buy Derby County Football Club. Mm-hmm. Mel Morris owned Pride Park and said, don't really like Mike Ashley. I'm in a position to say, therefore, if you want to go and buy Pride Park, it's going to cost you 100 million quid, or the rent's going to be 10 million quid. You just price them out of it. So you can be really awkward here. And ironically, Mike Ashley got his fingers burnt from that, and then did exactly the same to Coventry City. Yeah, because he went and bought. I still call it the RICO. Yes. Because that had gone into administration, and then he managed to sell it to Doug King. So it all gets really complicated and messy, and this is not why we are in love with football. That's the overarching tragedy of all of this. We come here because we want to celebrate that goal, that tackle, that chant, which we all thought was hilarious. Some of the gossip we had on the train or in the pub before the match, and this is all. It's a terrible, terrible distraction.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned that A word again in that last answer that you've given. So I'm going to push you on this one, which is a pre-pack administration. So could you explain, firstly, what a pre-pack administration is? Secondly, how would it work in Sheffield Wednesday's case, and who typically benefits from such a move? Is it the current owner, potential buyer, the club itself?
Right. A pre-pack administration normally works as follows. Now, I'm not in a position to make any observations here. When I used to work in the world of insolvency, which was a long, long time ago, and people say, how can you talk about current practice? My ex-wife also worked in administration, and she when I left to become a teacher, she stayed on for quite a few years doing that. So I'm hearing from boots on the ground. Mm-hmm. What will normally happen is the directors of the company will say, we're in a financial pickle. They call in a firm of accountants to take a look at the books, the order book, the debtors, cash flow projections, all of this sort of really tedious stuff that accountants spend their time doing, and then make a recommendation. I.e., you're not going to be able to pay the wages next month. We think you'd go into administration now. Now, what the administrators might be doing, even before they're appointed, we've all got contacts, and you might be able to find somebody whom you can say, look, we possibly have got a bit of business coming in, which is going to be, we think we can sell for 30 million. What happens is that the company here, which would be Sheffield Wednesday Football Club, goes into administration for 1 minute, and it is then sold in that 1 minute by the administrators to person X. What we have seen, and I have to be very careful here, because this has happened in the world of football.
Yes. And
some football owners are very litigious, and some football owners connected to other clubs in Europe, in Yorkshire, historically, are incredibly litigious. But it can be very beneficial for the current owner, because what you do is that you only buy the assets of the football club. So you don't inherit any of the money which is owed to other clubs, any of the money which is owed to staff, any of the money which is owed to local suppliers, loans. You just buy the assets, and that would be reflected in the price. So a new owner comes in, and the benefit of that is that, going back to what we saw at Wigan Athletic when it went into administration, going back to what we saw at Derby County, and in Scotland we've just had Inverness Cally Thistle come out of administration. The average hourly rate that you're paying is 400 quid an hour. So you've got how many members of staff there for how many weeks, potentially months. They're employing lawyers, they're employing surveyors. The costs of running the administration are very, very high. So if they're there effectively for a day, what are you doing? You're paying them for the fact that they have been there for a couple of weeks, just wandering around. And if there's anybody that knows people working at Wednesday, if you've got some strange people wandering around, in suits and with no personalities or charisma, then the chances are they are insolvency accountants. And that's sort of a bit of a giveaway. So that could be the case. They're viewed with a bit of suspicion, because the other person that you could sell the company to is a mate of the current owner. I don't think Dejon has many mates, because if he had, presumably one of them would have lent him some money to help to resolve the present financial predicament in which we find ourselves.
Absolutely. I know you were very careful who not to mention. So just for those who are wondering, marching on into our next question here. I suppose the question is, because it's felt like it's going to be a very important 30 days for Sheffield Wednesday for a long time now, Kieran. I suppose how... And this is a really difficult question to ask, because it's very clear that you constantly refer back to, obviously, the field at which you once worked in as kind of, you don't want to be talking to me, I am the Grim Reaper of football, but it's also very obvious that you care about football clubs that you're talking about. So I suppose my question is, how likely is it that fans could see more immediate consequences? For example, points deductions, fire sales of players in January if we get that far, and staff layoffs in the coming months?
I think all of those are feasible. Points deductions would normally be for a breach of PSR, or as we saw with another club which isn't too far away from you, for non-payment of football debts. Now, the advantage that Sheffield Wednesday have gotten, and it's an advantage that you don't want, is that I don't think you've got any football debts because you've not bought any players. So I think a points deduction under those circumstances isn't an issue. Again, downside of administration is that you get 15 points deduction, boom, immediately. So I always remain optimistic. And the reason why I say that is because football is not the same as rugby. We lost Worcester Warriors, we lost Wasps, we lost London Irish. Why? Because there was not a long line of potential saviours of the club. Football in this country is not only popular domestically, as we all know, we see the crowds and so on. It's also popular with international investors. Sheffield Wednesday has a fantastic history and heritage. It's known all over the world for being a football club. Are overseas investors interested? If the price is right, they are. And then it comes back to, well, what's stopping the price from being right? There's two reasons, two letters, and those are D and C, and an inability to understand how valuation works.
Yeah. Can I also just press you here, Kieran? Again, this is difficult because I'm asking you to share your personal opinion on this. When we last spoke, myself and you, I'm led off your expertise with this. We came to the conclusion of a rough figure for what Sheffield Wednesday is worth, given the current situation. And obviously, you've spoke about it's usually 1.5 times up to 2.5 times more than you're looking at potential. And Sheffield Wednesday has been a club full of potential for the last 26 years. How much do you think Sheffield Wednesday is actually worth now?
Well, I mean, last year's revenue was 26 million quid. So that would put it in the region of 40 to 50 million pounds. I think you've got to knock 10 million pounds off that now, because you are buying a distressed asset, because you're buying an asset where there has been inadequate expenditure on the infrastructure. So, if I'm looking to buy a house and I say, well, under normal circumstances, I'd buy that house for 200 grand, and I go there and I go, well, hold on, it's got 3 smashed windows, and the cooker doesn't work, and half the lights don't work, and it's got dry rot. What do? You reduce your asking price accordingly. So I think the value has gone down, and then there are the relegation related risks, which are greater than they were a few months ago. If somebody had come in May, they could have sorted all of these things out over the course of the summer. Well, they can't do that now. They've got the January window. It's never too late. Okay, never too late, but it makes it that much more. If I was advising Chansiri, and I'm not, what I would say to him is let's go with a structured price whereby you get 25 million pounds, and if Sheffield Wednesday, on the basis of we now think that Sheffield Wednesday are a League One club. Yeah. In terms of their playing budget, in terms of their recruitment budget, they have been operating like a League One club in the Championship. So let's say you get 25 million pounds. If they are promoted back to the Championship within 2 years, you get an extra X. And if they are promoted to the Premier League within, let's say, 5 years, you get another X. Mm-hmm. So it incentivizes him to come to the table. The new owner would acknowledge that as cash saved now. And yes, we have to pay him cash later, but if we get promoted, our TV money goes up and up substantially. So I have seen other deals for clubs which have been structured in such a way. So that's what I would be sort of trying to put forward, so that it allows greater pool of potential owners to come in, because we're not having to spend 40 million pounds up front. Is costing us 25. It might cost us 40 in 5 years' time, but that means that Chansiri shares in the success, and he will share in the lack of success if there is a lack of success. But again, we don't know his personal circumstances, and I go back to I think I certainly, when I've been on Owls Talk, and so I float around and just try to sort of pick up the temperature. I think a few people seem to be of the opinion that the value of his shareholding in the family firm has decreased. Yes. So that puts further financial pressure onto him, and we don't know. I mean, I'm aware of another EFL club where the fans are desperate for the owner to sell. The owner is quite keen to sell, but the owner owes money to other people, and those other people are being patient because they think they're going to get, the club will be sold for that, but they'll get the money back. If the club is sold for less than that, they go, well, hold on, we're short by how many 100,000 or a couple of million or whatever it's going to be, and chickens come home to roost, and some people you don't want to borrow money from.
No, absolutely. I suppose 2 questions before we finish them. This is in relation to the independent football regulator who is coming into power as of the 1st of November. It's felt for a little while amongst a certain section of the fan base, I would include myself in this, that the independent football regulator is the one who has the powers on paper, at least, to stop all of this madness. Do you see that being actually something that could and would happen based off the very limited information that we have surrounding how that is actually going to play out in reality? Because I'm aware that I'm going to sound like I'm digging somebody out here. I'm aware that the people who have been putting this act together and have discussed this are looking at it very much from the perspective of this is what we would like to happen. But I'm also aware that when we are talking multi-million pound investments and multi-billion pound businesses, that is not always the case. Do you see the independent football regulator actually having a tangible impact on being able to, for lack of a better phrasing here, force a sale of this football club or not?
The legislation would allow the regulator to effectively put Sheffield Wednesday into some form of special measures. Is my understanding, having looked at the legislation. But if Sheffield Wednesday is losing money every month, who is going to fund those losses? And one of my reservations, and I was involved with the fan-led review, and complete transparency, I have spoken to people at the regulator. I'm in favour of a regulator from sorrow rather than joy. It's not. I would like football to be able to sort itself out, and it's a failure of ownership. It's a failure of governance. It's a failure of communication that has led to where we are today. As a taxpayer, how do I feel about a situation where if we create an environment where owners can gamble when they own football clubs, and if it doesn't work out, they walk away, and the taxpayer then has to go and pay the wages for the next few months? I think that politically is very, very dangerous. I think it would also create a culture amongst certain owners of let's go for it, and if it doesn't work out, there's a safety net, and effectively nationalise the problems and privatise the successes, which is one of the accusations that was levelled if we go back to 2008 and the collapse of the financial services system. We were on the hook for RBS and all of those things, and people don't know just how much it cost this country. It was horrendous, but the alternative was the global banking system collapsing. Now, as much as you love Sheffield Wednesday, and I appreciate there'll be people listening here, it's not as important as that. So how do we come up with a solution? Certainly, the regulator is in a position to put some form of legal document to Sheffield, to Dajon Chansiri, saying you have to sell the club, and if you don't sell it, we'll sell it perhaps on your behalf. Where that stands legally, I don't know. So again, sports lawyers are doing very well these days. We don't need them to have yet another Lamborghini. So that's my concern. Yes, the regulator can do things, but we're recording this on the 25th of September. The regulator chair has still not yet been formally approved because there's been political objections, because David Cogan has, I think, had some small party political donations to the current government, and it's now, whereas 2 years ago it was cross-party support, that cross-party support no longer exists. So I think the official opposition are now opposed to the regulator, Reform are opposed to the regulator, and it starts to become part of identity politics in terms of what side of the fence you are. So I'm very good at sitting on fences, and my view is that we shouldn't need a regulator, because we should have the Football Association as the arbiter of decisions. But the FA has shown itself to have the backbone of a jellyfish in recent years when it comes to club football.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay. If I could ask you for, I'm not going to ask you for the logical conclusion because we all know what that is. What is the worst case scenario then for Sheffield Wednesday over the next 12 months, and what is the best case scenario? I think me and you would both be in agreement if you'll allow me for a second. Tomorrow morning we wake up and the news is that Dejphon Chansiri has sold it for a song. He hasn't got his money back. I think that at this point most Sheffield Wednesday fans would say that is kind of what they want from the situation. He sold it to a multi-billion-pound investor. They're about to build a new stadium. The training ground is already being dug up, and we're training at the University of Sheffield for a year, but we'll have a state-of-the-art facility, etc., etc. We know the best-case scenario. The worst-case scenario for Sheffield Wednesday over the next 12 months financially.
Well, in my concern is that the worst case scenario is that we limp on, that Dejphon Chansiri continues to delude himself that he can extract a high price for the club. Things continue to deteriorate in terms of player recruitment is concerned, and I think you appointed a new coach today. I'm pretty certain.
Yes, we've appointed. So Henrik Pedersen has been allowed to add to his backroom staff over the past couple of days. You were mentioning transfers coming in. Obviously, we've also had Harry Mass, who came in on deadline day, who was our only incoming over the summer window. That is because Man United are not only paying his wages, they're also paying his bus fare to training, etc., etc. So
and hacked off to Manchester United.
Absolutely.
They're not my favourite club by a long way.
No.
In terms of the way that they treat their staff.
Agreed.
But this is a good decision. So two worst case scenarios is A, Chansiri continues to stick his fingers in his ears, thinks that he knows better. And I think this is a major issue, and I'm not trying to do a character assassination. I've never met the guy, and he has put money into the club. I have to reiterate this, but he doesn't listen. And failure to listen has never got any of us anywhere. I suspect. No. Even worst case scenario is that you go beyond administration, and you have liquidation, and then there is no Sheffield Wednesday Football Club. The club loses its share in the EFL, and the Phoenix Club is formed. I think we are a long way from that, simply because the price which you could then extract. At least if I'm trying to sell Sheffield Wednesday administration, well, I've got a share in the EFL. I'm in the Championship. We've got all the knowledge and experience of the staff, the playing staff, the managerial staff, the back office staff, and that's all worth money. You've got the loyalty of the fans and so on. So you can sell that as a package. If a liquidator comes in, they don't own Hillsborough. So what are you doing? You're flogging off the laptops and the furniture on eBay. And Chansiri will get nothing under those circumstances, and it's not in his interests to go down that route.
Okay, Kieran, thank you so much for joining us. I think what I always leave our chats with is horrified, obviously, but also far more knowledgeable on the situation, because I think as Sheffield Wednesday fans, and I'm sure that you've experienced this when talking to Derby County fans and potentially Reading fans about this, is as a fan is obviously short for fanatic, so you do over sensationalise everything, and every small individual detail that comes out catastrophize to the nth degree in your head. And actually having someone like yourself who talks with a lot of logic and sense and has a basis in facts is really useful to actually understanding the reality of where the football club is at the minute. So thank you so much for another wonderful evening of listening to you. Perhaps put us right in regards to that, if that's okay. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much for the invite, and I genuinely hope that we meet in happier times. It would be great the next time I come on, you say, okay, talk me through the deal. And I'll go, it'll take us 5 minutes. Then we can go and talk, about the away kit. or something like that.
We've all been able to buy the away kit, which is great. So I will also hold you, Kieran, to and I will invite anybody who is watching or listening on stream to a curry house in Barnsley that is up some stairs somewhere for chicken balti post this sale going through as well. I am going to hold you to that. Thank you so much for joining us, Kieran. Thank you so much all for obviously listening along. Please catch us on the debate show in midweek. Obviously, please catch us on the main show on Sundays, and please sign up for the Patreon and the Discord. Obviously, links are in the bio for this and underneath our YouTube. Thank you very much all. Take care. Have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, dependent on when you're listening to this.
Thank you very much. And keep the faith. Okay, that's one thing. We must always keep the faith as football fans. So many clubs have been on the brink who are still there. I'm a Brighton fan. I know what it's like. I know how miserable it is as well. But just keep the faith.
Thank you so much, Kieran. Thank you very much all for listening. Have a good evening.